Very warm welcome from me, Warwick Lydiate. I'm here again at the Sangha house in Taunton in the southwest of the UK. Warm welcome to this session. I'm talking again about the Enneagram, this diagram here. I must say I'm very grateful to Andy and Denise Spragg, the owners of the Sangha house, who have very kindly allowed me to come and do these videos on the Enneagram here. And I'm very grateful to Andy, who's actually doing all the tech side with these videos as well. So my gratitude for that. The Enneagram is this diagram, a quick reminder of what we're about. A diagram that sets out 9 personality types, all ranged around a circle. We've seen already how they kind of interact. I want to give you a quick reminder of what each of them is. And just a reminder as well that each personality type that the Enneagram brings us into it comes into the world searching for something. Each type has a particular quest. So, for instance, type 1, the reformer, is looking for perfection. The idea is they'll be reforming things to find that perfection. Type 2 is the helper, looking for love, searching for love and bringing love. Type 3, the achiever, looking for success. Type 4, which we looked at on the last session, is the romantic and the quest for meaning, to find meaning in life. Today we'll be looking a little bit more in detail at the type 5, the observer. And the observer's quest is for knowledge and understanding. Type 6, the loyal skeptic, will be looking out for security and safety. The adventurer, type 7, looks for adventure, exactly that, not wanting to be tied down, looking for the adventures of life. Type 8, the asserter, searches for power and strength. And type 9, the peacemaker, obviously is looking for peace, the search, the quest for peace. So those are the kind of basic types of the Enneagram. And what I'm trying to do in each of these sessions at the moment is to try and set out something about the Enneagram each time, but also then giving a little thumbnail sketch of each of those types, and I call them primary colours on an artist's palette, to give that kind of feel about these early explorations of the Enneagram. We'll see as time goes on that there are many shades, many pastel shades, pastel colours that the Enneagram has, as there are to our personality types. One thing I would say here at this stage, I've said each of these types these personality types are searching for something. And the search will never, none of us will ever find what we're looking for by searching the world out there. In a moment, when we look at the 5 is the quest for knowledge, the search for wisdom. And the 5 searches in books. But we'll see in a minute that that's not really the ultimate place for finding the wisdom and knowledge that we're truly looking for. Perhaps a good example, one that we've looked at already, the type 1. The other name for the type 1 is the perfectionist. So the 1 looks for perfection in the world and tries to put right in little ways things that they can do by reforming little things. It's an attempt to create a kind of perfect world around the type 1. But perfection, the type 1 has to realize that perfection will never be found by doing that. Perfection is here already. Alan Watts, the great philosopher, used to point to the clouds and say, you can't kind of put that right. It's perfect the way it is. Or he'd draw attention to the night sky, and you can't sort of order the stars and the planets in ways that seem ordered. It seems random. That's the way of it. And perfection is found by seeing the perfection in what is there already. So more of that kind of expansive view of the Enneagram as time goes on, but just to realise that these quests, these searches, are really will only be a partial experience for us. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The other thing that, just to remind you of, that the Enneagram is divided into 3 sections. The 8, the 9 and the 1 are the types most associated with the energy of the body, doing things, the activity, the powerful, strong energy of the body, the intuition, intuitive energy. The 2, 3 and 4 is the energy of the heart and the desire for connection. And today we'll be moving into the 5, 6 and 7, and this is the area of the head, the area of the mind. The downside is that the 8, 9 and 1 can have issues around anger. When we have been round the Enneagram, we get to type 8. We'll come into that a little bit more. We've seen it a little bit in the type 1. The 2, 3 and 4, the heart energy. The downside is the downside is about image. And the desire to be seen, the desire to be seen, of the 3, to be seen, to be successful, is just one example. To be seen, to be successful and achieving. And the 5, 6, 7, the downside is fear. It's when those types overthink, and it can feel stressful in various ways. We'll come on to the fear that the type 5 feels in a moment. And just one last thing to say about the Enneagram generally at this stage. There are actually 3 gaps. There's a gap between type 7 and type 8. And this is the gap between the mind. These 3 represent the mind and the head space, and the body. Here is a gap here between the mind and the body. I know all the gaps are equidistant. It doesn't look like a gap. But there's a gap between the body and the mind. It's hard for folk who are frequently in their headspace to get into the body. Very, very important to do. But there is a gap there. And there's a gap between the body types and the heart, the feeling centre of the heart. Now, these are all noted in Enneagram circles, but nothing is more noted than the gap between the 4 and the 5, which is the gap between the heart and the head, between the heart and the mind. And much Enneagram ink has been spilt over that gap right there. So it's almost as if, I know we don't go outside the circle. Everybody is contained within the circle of the Enneagram. But it can feel a little bit for the 4, as if this line, for instance, carries on down. Because the 4 feels the depth of emotion, the depth and feeling of the heart. Things are felt by the type 4 very, very intently. And in the 5, the same thing happens. It's almost as if these lines carry on down. because it's about the depth of the mind, the depth of thinking, the depth of thought. And somewhere beneath the floorboards in this room, those two, it feels like they meet. I know it doesn't, but it can feel that way. So I'm getting really ahead of myself, and before I go further, let's get into type 5. So here we are straight away. You ask a type 5 how they feel, and they will straight away tell you what they think. Because that's where the feeling is. The feeling, type 5s feel, just because they're head types doesn't mean to say they don't feel. They do. But feeling almost is done up here in the mind. 5s are often described as drawbridge, pull up the drawbridge type of people. Kind of very happy in themselves, very integrated. Probably the most introverted of the Enneagram types, but they can, as we shall see, come out of the shell. Another useful word that 5s tend to make use of is the word fascinating. How fascinating, how interesting. 5s are learners and researchers. They are eternal students. As I've said, each type wants to find what's missing. The 4 is finding the meaning. The 5 is searching for knowledge and wisdom and understanding. It's almost as if somebody in childhood has said to them, "Oh, you stupid person, you stupid, but how could you think such a thing?" And they've given a jolt and thought, right, I've been caught out here. There's something I don't know about here. I need to know. You won't catch me out again. I'm going to research this. I'm going to find out all I can about this. You won't catch me again. So 5s kind of pick up on that energy and spend a lot of time researching. So they love time in the library, time over books, time with the internet. Someone has said that the internet is a type 5 energy. All that information is out there. Other than that, type 5s can be gentle, unassuming, a little bit kind of detached people, very patient. I've heard somebody say you'll never outweight a 5. And that's because the 5's head is so full of stuff. As head people, the 5 is... the mind is going on and on and on with all kinds of interesting and exciting things. And they're quite happy to wait in queues or traffic queues, those sorts of things, and wait for ages because they're mulling things over in their heads. Rarely bored, endlessly occupied in the mind. Can be contrasted a little with 7s. 7s like the adventures of dashing around the world, planning this and that. The 5 doesn't need that. They do that anyway up here, the adventures of the mind. They dash around in the mind. They can be creative and quite radical thinkers. They think outside the box, and they'll think quite possibly a long way outside the box, and often can connect things together that seem in themselves remote. I've said the 5, 6 and 7, the head types, are in the fear group, shall we call them, the head group. So what does the 5 fear? Although there are two things really. Firstly, this whole thing of looking stupid. Perhaps they've been made to feel that way in the past, and they will dread looking foolish. So that's one fear. So a 5 will not just read one book on a subject and think, I know that. no, you've got to read this book and this book and this book and this book and this book, and then they just feel they're getting an inkling of the subject, and then they can come out and maybe express an opinion on something. So this fear of looking stupid will enable them to have a wide look at all kinds of subject with almost a laser-like intensity. And the other thing that fives fear is being depleted. They're very happy in the library, very happy in the bookshop, very happy at the desk and being a student. But if you come out of that, there's a big world out there which is kind of depleting. And it makes the five want to kind of hold on to the energy that they have. Being out in the world, being out in the public spaces, particularly things like loud, noisy parties, they're very depleting. It can feel depleting to the five. So, if this is you, maybe that you have this five energy, maybe you are a type 5 yourself. There's a good way that fives escape looking foolish, and we've kind of hinted that already with this word fascinating. So if a type 5 will get into a conversation with somebody and they don't know anything about this subject, this person is talking about something that they know nothing about, rather than look foolish and say, "Well, I don't know," they'll say, "That's fascinating. That is so interesting. Tell me more." And this is part of the quest for knowledge, the quest for knowing. So fives tend to have quite a compartmentalized mind. It's in blocks and everything is kind of filed away. They tend to have good memories, very good memories, but they will be selective. So the memory will remember everything about this subject and probably not about that one over there if they're not particularly bothered about that. So the memory is very selective. You'll also find that fives might have something of a quirky humour, a dry, witty kind of, maybe even bordering on sarcasm, this witty kind of humour. Sometimes they'll use humour if they feel awkward, to get themselves out of an awkward social situation where they perhaps feel a bit uncomfortable. They might pick up on a funny side, something funny. They'll either toss in some radical statement or a dry, witty piece of humour. So one of the things that fives tend to do, I'm speaking with a bit of a personal angle here because I am a type 5 myself. I spend quite a lot of time over here in the 4 space because I have quite a strong 4 wing. But basically, I am a type 5 myself. And I just want to really conclude by talking about this word hiding. Fives are good at hiding away. And as you know, each week I give a little quote from this beautiful book, Consolations by David White. And White really says 2 things about hiding. One which is comforting to a 5, and the other which kind of brings the 5 out. He says this: hiding is a way of holding ourselves until we are ready to come into light. What is precious inside us does not care to be known by the mind in ways that diminish its presence. Hiding is an act of freedom from the misunderstanding of others. Hiding is the radical independence necessary for our emergence into the light of a proper human future. White allows us to hide with our books and with our studying, but he does say that there's a time to come out. There's a time to emerge and bring insights or just themselves out into the world. I hope you've enjoyed this session looking at the Type 5. Next time we'll be looking at some other aspects of the Enneagram and focusing on Type 6 with this curious double name, the loyal skeptic. Bye for now. Thank you for listening.